KCJJ. Right now, it's 15.
Morning to you. It is 7:29, the mighty 1630 KCJJ, and the donkey, the real-life donkey that inspired the movie Shrek, has passed away.
Oh, my God.
And now with his comments on it, here's Sheriff Brad Kunkel.
Breaking news.
We can talk about that, too.
How are you doing?
Good, good. It's cold outside, that's for sure.
Yeah. How the New Year treat you?
Oh, better than people. No, it was good. It was busy. It was a busy night for law enforcement, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
I think one of the stories you guys posted had a mention in there about, I don't think there were like 10 OWI arrests or something.
Yeah,
I think it was about half of the.
There was more than that, but I mean the first initial report from your office showed at least 10.
Yeah, it's about probably half of the people that came in that night were for OWI. So it seemed like a little higher than usual, but like everything else in the law enforcement world, crime comes and goes. It goes up.
Yeah.
There's ups and downs. It's really hard to say what's consistent, but it was busy. And on a personal note, my son was home on leave, so the whole family was around for
Nice.
the holidays. So that was kind of nice, and
Yeah.
had some good time with everybody. And
Now is he back on base?
yep, yeah, he left last Friday, went back home and back to Colorado, and back to normal here. Best we can.
Now, do your kids going back to? Are all your kids out of high school now?
No, I still got one in high school, one in middle school.
And they're back in class this week.
Yep. My youngest was even lamenting last night when she just middle school's the worst. So,
It is.
yeah, I don't.
He's not lying about that.
No, he's not a fan of middle school. That's for sure.
We lived in a small town, but we had two schools, two great elementary schools combined in middle school. So you've got, first of all, you're dealing with people. You're the top of the elementary school chain, and all of a sudden you're down at the lower end of the middle school chain. Now you got all these strangers in school with you. It's a rough transition.
Yeah, and it's interesting. At the sheriff's office, we have that whole spectrum of school districts that we interact with. You have like Lone Tree, for example, where it's K-12 all in one building. You got the little kids on the first floor and the seniors on the second floor, and then you've got Solon, which has 4 different buildings. Tiffin has 4 in town, plus the one out in Oxford. So, and then Hillcrest, which is same thing, a private school in the west part of the county. So we see the whole gamut of schools out in the rural Johnson
never
County
understand
too.
Hillcrest's idea of delays. Everybody else, it's 2 hours, and theirs is 90 minutes. I mean,
Do they start half an hour later than everybody else, maybe?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't either.
I got I kind of chuckled a few weeks ago. We had an arrest that we posted on Facebook, and this one person that I recognized his name said he just got out of the jail, and he said he's been in a lot of jails, but none so cold as the Johnson County Jail.
Now they're leaving Yelp reviews on the jails.
Yeah, and when you have, when you have a concrete block exterior wall and nothing in between it to help block the cold that radiates through, and then the beds are right next to the wall.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, there's just no way. There's no way around the cold of radiating through the concrete.
How much does it cost to heat that place? You know?
Not off the top of my head, I don't.
I would imagine it would cost a good amount.
It's a lot, and also all the HVAC is on the roof, but there's separate units for separate parts of the building. And one of the problems we run into is they're so old, we can't just find like a new thermostat or a new part for it at the store. So the facilities folks at the county actually have to find some of these parts on eBay.
Oh, wow.
To find something that's going to work.
Wow.
We had the last time before we changed our furnace, we had the guys from Brant come out here, And I said, can you fix it? And the guy just looked at me and goes, do you have an old tractor?
Add it to the list of problems you run into when a building is 45 years old and used 24/7, and it's hard wear and tear.
Yeah, it's severe service is what they call
and
it.
at the end of its life, and it continues to cost us significant amounts of money.
Have you had any conversations going further about the replacement?
Well, we do. So a couple things. The Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee had some life breathed back into it a few months ago. So that was a committee that was around, 13 years ago to help get information out about the justice system and the jail in the county. So we reconstituted that a few months ago, had our first meeting in October, November. And it's made up of like the board, myself, county attorney, some couple local, like one of the nonprofits is on there, a couple community members, actually somebody who's even spent time in the jail, had some lived experience. So it's a pretty broad section of people who have input and interactions. But we spent the first meeting, I gave a history of just the building itself and kind of how we got to this point. I talked about jail diversion. There was a presentation from GuideLink. At the second meeting is when I'm like, well, first of all, I kind of put a stop and I said, we have to talk about where are we going with this? We have this group now, but we haven't agreed on what we're going to do. And we haven't seen a commitment from the Board of Supervisors, or as we've continued to talk with Iowa City, we've had some call it formal discussions with leadership from the city, but there's been no formal action by the council either to say, this is the direction we want to go. We want to explore this.
Because wasn't it being discussed that you would form with the city of Iowa City? And
so that's what we're looking at that as an option, because we have to rule that in or out as we go down this road. So what we're doing now, so right about the same time we had a space study done at the county, the city of Iowa City had one done also for like the Civic Center and the police department. And because they're in a very similar position we are, an aging building, they've outgrown it, and their study said their top priority should be the police department and not being located at that downtown location anymore. So we have to look at whether or not it'd be sensible to join the two into the same building, not agencies or operation or anything like that. Just put them in the same building. So that's what we're looking at now.
Because the ones that don't get like the kids that are there for a few hours, the real problems, they would come to the county jail anyway, would they not?
Everybody does.
Yeah,
everybody does. So the concept would be the jail itself, the housing unit itself would still be a separate standalone function of the building, and you basically have it somehow connected. Call it a hallway, for example's sake, a corridor that connects it to the larger operational building for police department, sheriff's office, operations administration. That way you could make the best use of the space. You could share resources, you could share information, and you wouldn't have the county and the city going to the voters within, say, a year or two of each other with large-scale bond referendums. You could have one large project to present to everybody. And there's a lot of compelling reasons to look at that. Would it make more sense, instead of having two big projects that cost hypothetically $80 million and $60 million, could you combine them, make it a little more efficient, and get it down to under 100, for example? I don't know, but you have to explore that one way or the other. So we're looking at it at the same time. And then in the meantime, we still have our next Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee meeting is Thursday. They're Thursday afternoons, it's the first Thursday of the month at 3:30. And so at least at this point we agreed on a mission statement last time, which is the focus of this committee is to replace the Johnson County Jail and Sheriff's Office. And there's some language in there about, kind of the guidance we're going to take on and how we do that. But the mission statement from 15 years ago was pretty broad. It had more to do with the justice system itself and all these things. And now, I mean, we're in a different place now. And, you know, you can draw a line from all the lessons that were learned, the kind of the public message that there was, and, you know, the desire from the public to do more to reduce the population in the last 15 years. And we've done that. And you can draw a line and I have a timeline I've even made to show all these things that have happened and the millions we've invested across the community in the last 15 or 20 years to affect the jail population. We've done a lot of good things. I really think the county and the stakeholders have held up their end of the bargain, if you will. They've done a really good job of being innovative, committing to helping people, committing to do better about the jail population. And now it's time to do the next piece of it, and that is replace the building. We can't. This is not something we can go without. We are not we're not a small county where going without is an option, where you can consolidate with another county. That's not an option for Johnson County, Iowa. That's the reality of it.
I came here going on 31 years ago, and we had a population then of 128,000 people. Now it's at 161, and still going up.
Right.
I mean, that's a significant amount of growth.
It is, and public safety buildings are infrastructure, just like every other service that the government provides. You know, the government has to provide you a place to go vote, pay your taxes, get your driver's license, which, if my middle son is listening, he needs to go get the stinking thing renewed. But you have to have a place to go do it. You have to have a place that is accessible, that is accommodating, that is open, that is efficient, that is safe, that meets the needs of the staff and the people that use it. And across the board, across the county, we've invested in those things too. You know, we
just finished up with the administration building.
Sure, the admin building had a multi-million-dollar remodel. The ambulance and medical examiners building is a very nice new building. We have, you know, the communication center on the west side of town because we consolidated dispatch back in 2012. You know, we invest in new water plants and we invest in new sewer treatment plants. Fire stations, you know, things that are related to public safety and public services. Now is the time we have to invest in our public safety buildings also, because public safety is the number one responsibility of the government. It's the number one, keeping the public safe. We have to invest in the infrastructure for the people that do that work too.
Have you any discussions broken through with the people that say we don't? Well, there's one that I'm thinking of that says we don't need a jail.
I don't know if I'll ever. I don't know if that will ever. I mean, sometimes that's what people believe, and you can't change what people believe. I don't know. I don't know what
explain the crime.
What's that?
How do they explain the crime? I mean, there's serious crime that happens here.
As a young woman was just murdered.
Yeah.
You know, and when those things happen, that's a good question, Steve. Is like how do you explain that? I mean, I know.
I mean, if you don't need a jail, I don't understand the mindset. Some people still are under some call it a myth, I'd call it a lie, that you're only arresting kids.
It is a lie. It's not a myth. That's a lie to say that.
Yeah, and then some say, well, we don't need jails, and
that's a lie too.
Yeah.
Well, and you talk about humane facilities and stuff. You would think these people would want. If you are incarcerated, they should be treated with respect and dignity. And you feel the same way, but yet you're in a facility that makes it very difficult for that to happen.
Yeah,
it does.
Where they're cold.
It does. But you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't
be.
They're
overcrowded. I mean, how long has it been since the jail got built that you've been over capacity and have to farm out?
It was double bunked around 1990. Yeah. So it's been a while. Say it's been overcrowded and you've had since 1990.
Send people to other counties to be incarcerated because you don't have room.
And then there's the risk involved in that too. And I think I've talked about this before. The transportation is a high liability operation that we have to do. there is a significant amount of risk that goes into transporting people. There's the risk of an accident that you can't even control, just from another person, from somebody running a stoplight and hitting a vehicle. You never know. We do everything we can to make sure we're providing for safety of the inmates and the staff. But it's a risk every time, and we're on the road every single day to, right now, 4 different jails where we're housing our inmates. Plus, there's just the day-to-day transports we do. A guy gets picked up in Worth County, or we got to bring a person back from Mitchellville who's in the Department of Corrections and back to court. I mean, that's all there's cost of doing business. But we're spending money hand over fist housing people out of county when we shouldn't be doing that. In all these counties that we've spent over $16 million in now in out-of-county housing costs, their voters should be sending us thank you cards because we have subsidized their public services for decades. We should not be doing this anymore.
I like when Washington picks up people and they just drop them off here. They don't take them to the jail necessarily.
Well,
they just drop them off.
Sometimes that's what law enforcement does. I mean, if you even if they're not wanted, like you come across somebody, hey, where do you need to get to? Well, hey, I'm trying to get to Des Moines, and okay, well, I can get you as far as the next city over in the next county on the way, and you can leapfrog a person to where they need to get to also. I mean, that happens. But, we've also, anyway, it's frustrating because for some, I mean, a function of government that I truly, at the end of the day, I believe what we do and all law enforcement locally, I really believe we are doing good things and we do the right thing and we're doing our best to make the community safer. And what we're trying to do and the need for a new building is part of our mission. I really wish people would put their swords down and work with me instead of viewing me and the sheriff's office as the enemy. But frustratingly, that's what we run into.
Well, and it doesn't help. There are a few bad apples. But when you look at the overall of the country, they are few.
That's right.
It's not happening everywhere all the time.
No.
I mean, news is the unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's thrown in your face. Here's what this bad apple did or whatever. But again, you got to remember that news is the unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, law enforcement is there for a reason,
mm-hmm.
and they take that serve and protect very seriously.
Absolutely. And when you look at any other industry that involves our daily lives, whether it's teaching or banking or the healthcare industry, we don't want to burn the goddamn house down when there are bad actors in those. But for some reason, when it's involving law enforcement, it's become this, it's demonized so heavily and rushes to judgment. And that's another frustrating part of doing this work, because that can really have an impact on the frontline people doing the work every day. They work hard, they put their lives on the line, they know tomorrow's not guaranteed, and then when they have to pay the price for somebody else's decision, whether it's locally or across the country, I mean, that's just really hard to deal with, because we're doing the best we can to do really good work every day.
What's that like? I haven't. I didn't want to get out of bed this morning.
It's okay. In other news, it's budget season, so when all the county departments start having their meetings with the board to sit down and talk about their budget priorities for the next year, it takes a couple months to get through all the budget meetings because all the county departments have to sit down, talk about what their priorities are, give a little overview of the last year and what the future looks like. And by the time you go through all the county departments, there's only so much time in the day and so much time in the meeting, and the board's got to do other county business. It takes a long time. So the first few departments started doing their meetings last month. County attorney and some others are doing like theirs this morning. I don't present mine until February. So we'll see how those go. It's another piece of what the county does. I really wish more people paid attention to. They stream the meetings. You can go back and watch them, but to not only see what the priorities of the other county departments' elected officials are, but what's that feedback and input from the board look like. If you really want to see how the county functions, just watch one of these budget meetings and see how much time and effort the people preparing these really put into them, and the responsibility that they have and how serious they take their job in their office.
Well, and it's, it used to be before the streaming and everything that this stuff could pass you by and you'd have a real, oh, I didn't hear about that. Now, if you're interested, it's all there. You just have to have the interest to look at it.
That's exactly right. Meeting minutes are still really hard to get the full concept and context of what happened in a meeting. So it is nice now that a lot of entities are streaming and recording their meetings or putting them on YouTube so you can go back and watch. It's not as boring as you think sometimes, but again, you can really see the dedication everybody has, but also what the department heads and elected officials are doing that they think is best for the job or office that they hold. And then how that runs into the board has to make decisions about the priorities of everybody else and their own priorities and where those run into each other.
What is your relationship with the Board of Supervisors? You guys get along okay, or is there some pushback occasionally, or?
Well, I present my budget in February. The budget meetings are always a good time for the board to ask questions and get some better insight. But there can be some headbutting from time to time. I mean, you're gonna see that. What bothers me is when it's not, if it's not in some sort of good faith effort to make government better,
right,
or understand better about what we're doing, or if it's roadblocks to the mission of the office or whatever somebody's down there talking about. That's where I think we're doing. People can do a disservice if it's in some sort of a dishonest or bad faith effort. It's a new year. We'll see how things go. I think the challenge of the budget this year will be, we've seen this coming. I think with the changes the state has done for how much local governments can capture for their tax levies is really going to start hamstringing local governments. The budget I'm presenting this year is it's pretty conservative. It's in the sense that we made some reductions in places we've spent in the past, increased in for, say, training and that kind of thing, but really it winds up being a net zero increase. And then we're asking for an administrative assistant position, a new position to add, because we want to kind of take a lot of these clerical tasks we've seen in the jail, make things more efficient, and so that way jail staff could focus on more operational stuff. So I'm asking for an administrative position assistant, but then in all my other lines, it's a zero. So effectively, it's a zero budget, other than the increases for wages, which are negotiated in the union contract. So I think you're going to see a lot of conservative budgets this year, but what worries me is when they have to start making those decisions, and when finance is talking about decreasing revenues and all these things, whether it's the county or the small towns, I think are really going to have the worst of it, is when they're having to talk about cutting services. I think those things are coming, and I think that's when people are really going to realize that the local governments can't sustain their services without the adequate funding. And they've only got two options. They can raise revenues, which is becoming really harder for them, or decrease services so they can maintain operations.
It's ridiculous. The state is, I almost said gradually, but it's not really gradually either. They're just grabbing more of the income. Here we've got this, they tout this big, huge surplus, and they're just
Where's it
sitting
going?
on it.
Yes.
They're sitting on it, so that the next time the governor runs or somebody runs, they, hey, look at all this surplus we build up, a lot of which came from the Biden administration. And the fact that they didn't use it for what it was intended to be used for.
I think if especially folks that live in small towns, ask your city clerk or your city councils, what's the budget look like for next year? And see what they're saying about their decreasing revenues because of these cuts. I think you'll be surprised at what you're hearing, and that I think everybody's pretty worried. And we're in a time where we shouldn't be, with higher inflation, higher costs, and everything else, and yet we're talking about local governments having a harder time meeting demands. Those two numbers are running in the opposite ways. So I think ask your city clerks, ask your mayors, your city administrators, hey, what's the budget outlook for next year? And then ask them why.
Yeah. No, people just think I'm a rat and raping libtard. But the fact of the matter is, they're sitting on a lot of cash, and they're not using it where it should be going. It should be going to the local governments. Well, you shouldn't have to cut back services.
Shouldn't have to cut back, especially like the fundamental services that we need to go about our daily lives. Public safety, roads, streets, water, sewer, trash pickup, just your basic services that we expect. We shouldn't have to be talking about cuts to those things, but who knows? There's a lot of other things your local governments do that are outside of those core services that they're able to because they've got a little extra. But I think those are the dominoes I think that'll start falling first are, the extra things they do to help nonprofits and, funding requests from local community groups and those kind of things. I think those are the things that are going to dry up first. And those all struggle to begin with.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to make it harder for them, and that's not right.
Did you have something?
I was just going to say, the state legislators, we got a tax cut this year, income tax cut, and they say, well, the gap, we've got money in the surplus to fill the gap, and they seem to think it's sustainable. And what that means to me is they're going to start cutting the budget. And the budgets, to the cities and everybody else, make it look good politically. That look, we're staying within our budget, and we're not overtaxing our citizens. And it's, it's a whitewash because they're already talking about nothing's off the table when it comes to property tax cuts, and I'm sure. Cities and municipalities and counties are kind of shaking in their boots about that.
I think they are. I think they're worried.
Yep.
So, you're growing a beard, a mustache. It's taking away from your boyish good look.
Don't worry, it hasn't taken away from my boyish charms. It's funny. I was.
See, his isn't totally gray though. It's all right.
Just this morning, I was thinking, I'm about tired of it. Last year, I hung on to it till I want to say it was May. I remember it was warm out, and I was outside doing some yard work, and it reminded me that it was like that scene. You seen Napoleon Dynamite?
Yeah.
When Pedro shaved his head, and he's just like, my head got hot. It's kind of how my face. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna. So I was having that last night and this morning. I'm kind of tired of it, but. I don't know. I might get rid of it.
I was going to shave this morning, and then I looked in the mirror, and I go, "There's nothing going to help."
It's just one more thing to take care of,
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Good to see you.
Mighty 1630, KCJJ.